paramedics who found me said I was lucky to be alive. My Honda had rolled 3 times before coming to rest upside down in a wash about 50 feet from the freeway. The roof was completely crushed, and it was a miracle that I hadn't been killed instantly. The police detective who interviewed me at the hospital was polite but clearly skeptical when I told him about my passenger. Detective Rodriguez was an older guy, probably close to retirement, with the kind of weathered face that suggested he'd seen everything during his career. But when I described Marcus and what had happened in the car, I could see the doubt creeping into his expression. "So you're telling me this passenger attacked you, causing you to crash, but when we found you, there was no sign of anyone else in the vehicle?" he asked, consulting his notes. "That's right. He just vanished. Mr. Chun, I've been investigating traffic accidents for 15 years. People don't just vanish from car wrecks. If someone had been thrown from the vehicle during the crash, we would have found evidence, blood, clothing, a body somewhere in the vicinity. They found no evidence of anyone else in the vehicle, and the security camera footage from the convenience store only showed me making the purchase alone. When I insisted that Marcus had ordered the delivery, they checked with Food Dash and discovered that the order had been placed using a fake account with a prepaid credit card that couldn't be traced. The order was placed from a public Wi-Fi network at a coffee shop that's been closed for 3 months, Detective Rodriguez explained. Whoever placed it knew enough about technology to cover their tracks. But I know what I experienced, and based on what I've been seeing online since getting out of the hospital, I don't think I'm the only one. The official news outlets aren't reporting any of this. Channel 12, Channel 3, the Arizona Republic, they're all staying quiet, running their normal mix of political coverage and human interest stories. But if you know where to look on social media, there are accounts of strange attacks happening all over the Phoenix metropolitan area. A woman in Glendale posted a video of her neighbor climbing up the side of a 2-story house with his bare hands, moving like a spider. The video was deleted within hours, but not before dozens of people had downloaded and shared it. A man in Mesa described being chased through a shopping mall parking lot by 3 people who moved like wolves hunting in a pack, coordinating their movements in ways that seemed impossible for random strangers. College students at ASU have been posting about classmates who stopped attending lectures and started showing up on campus at night, lurking around the dormitories and student centers with dead eyes and too many teeth. I've been monitoring the police scanner apps constantly, and the emergency calls are increasing every night. Home invasions where the perpetrators are described as acting like wild animals. Missing persons reports that never make it to the news. Hospital emergency rooms that are mysteriously overcrowded with patients suffering from severe bite wounds and unexplained blood loss. My brother Danny drove down from Flagstaff yesterday to check on me. He's convinced that I'm having some kind of psychological breakdown brought on by the trauma of the accident. PTSD can cause all kinds of symptoms, he keeps telling me. False memories, paranoid delusions, hypervigilance. You need to see a psychiatrist. Maybe he's right. Maybe I am losing my mind. But I don't think so. 3 nights have passed since my crash, and I can feel the tension building in the city. The infection, or whatever it is spreading. People are staying indoors after dark. The few who venture out move quickly and in groups. Businesses that normally stay open 24 hours are closing early. Even the fast food restaurants and gas stations are shutting down by midnight. The homeless population that usually congregates in downtown Phoenix has virtually disappeared. The parks and underpasses where they normally set up camps are empty, like they've all fled to somewhere safer or been driven out by something worse than the usual urban dangers. I've started carrying a silver cross that belonged to my grandmother, even though I'm not particularly religious. I've also bought a baseball bat and keep it in my car, along with a large flashlight and a first aid kit. I don't know if any of these things will help, but they make me feel slightly less helpless. Last night, I was lying in bed trying to sleep when I heard scratching sounds coming from outside my apartment. It sounded like claws scraping against the stucco wall, moving slowly around the perimeter of the building. I grabbed my baseball bat and went to the window, but when I pulled back the curtain, there was nothing there. Just an empty parking lot bathed in the orange glow of the sodium vapor lights. But in the morning, I found scratch marks in the wall outside my bedroom window. For parallel gouges, deep enough to expose the wire mesh underneath the stucco. Something with very sharp hashtag the night shift. I'm typing this from my apartment in Phoenix, Arizona, with my left hand in a cast and enough bandages on my head to look like a mummy. 3 days ago, I thought I was just another delivery driver trying to make ends meet. Now I'm not sure what I witnessed, but I know the world changed that night. My name is Jake, and I've been driving for Food Dash in the greater Phoenix area for about 8 months. The pay isn't great, but the night shift usually means better tips and fewer traffic jams. I've delivered to mansion parties in Scottsdale and sketchy apartments in South Phoenix, seen drug deals go down in parking lots, and had more than my share of drunk college kids try to get me to stop at drive-thrus that closed hours ago. Hell, I've even had a few passengers proposition me, thinking I was some kind of ride service. But nothing prepared me for what happened last Tuesday. My older brother Danny thinks I'm losing my mind. He's been calling me every few hours since I got out of the hospital, asking if I'm taking my medication and whether I need him to drive down from Flagstaff. Danny's always been the practical one in the family. He's a nurse at the medical center up there, sees real trauma every day, and he's convinced that what I experienced was just a concussion-induced hallucination combined with the stress of the accident. Brain injuries can cause all kinds of weird shit, he keeps telling me. False memories, paranoid delusions, the whole 9 yards. Maybe he's right. Maybe I'm going crazy. But the thing is, I've been a delivery driver for almost a year now, and I've seen all kinds of weird stuff in the city after midnight. Phoenix has always had its share of problems. The heat makes people do strange things. The drug trade brings violence, and the massive homeless population means you never know what you'll encounter in the darker corners of the city. But what happened Tuesday night was different. It was wrong in a way I can't quite articulate. It was around 2:15 a.m. when I got the ping. A late-night delivery to an address in Tempe, near the University District. The order was simple enough, just some energy drinks and snacks from a 24-hour convenience store. The customer's name was listed as Marcus, and there was a note that said, "Please hurry, emergency." I had just finished a delivery to some rich kid's dorm room in Scottsdale, probably funded by daddy's credit card, and I was thinking about calling it a night. My beat-up Honda Accord was running low on gas, and I had already made enough to cover rent for the week. But emergency orders usually meant bigger tips, so I decided to take one more run. The drive from Scottsdale to Tempe should have been routine. I'd made it hundreds of times before, usually listening to late-night AM radio or one of those true crime podcasts that help pass the time. But as soon as I got on the surface streets, I knew something was off. First, there were way more police cars than usual. Not just one or two racing to a domestic disturbance or drunk driving stop, but streams of them. Squad cars, unmarked vehicles, even some of those tactical units that the Phoenix PD usually only brings out for drug raids or gang violence. They were all heading in different directions. Sirens wailing, emergency lights painting the empty streets in alternating red and blue. Then there were the helicopters. Phoenix always has police choppers in the air. It's a big city with a lot of crime. But this was different. I counted at least 5 of them circling different neighborhoods, their searchlights sweeping back and forth across residential areas like they were hunting for something specific. The radio was weird too. The local news station I usually listened to was playing generic elevator music instead of their normal overnight programming. When I tried to tune to other stations, half of them were just dead air or emergency broadcast tones. The few that were working seemed to be playing pre-recorded content instead of live shows. But the thing that really got my attention was the people. Even at 2 a.m., you usually see some activity in Phoenix, bar crowds heading home, shift workers getting off late jobs, insomniacs walking their dogs. That night, the streets were practically deserted. The few pedestrians I did see were moving with purpose, heads down, walking fast like they were trying to get somewhere safe as quickly as possible. The delivery address led me to one of those generic apartment complexes that house college students, the kind with thin walls, cheaper rent, and a perpetual smell of weed in the hallways. Normally, these places are buzzing with activity even late at night. College kids don't keep normal hours, and there's usually music playing somewhere, people hanging out on balconies, someone coming or going at all hours. This place was dead silent. As I pulled into the parking lot, I noticed several windows were broken on the second floor, and there was what looked like furniture scattered on the ground below. A few cars had their doors hanging open, keys still dangling from the ignitions. One vehicle, a beat-up Toyota Corolla, had what looked like claw marks scratched deep into the paint along the driver's side door. The fluorescent lights in the parking lot were flickering intermittently, casting everything in an unsteady, strobing glow that made the shadows dance. A shopping cart from the nearby grocery store was turned on its side in the middle of the lot, its contents spilled everywhere. Milk cartons, bread, canned goods, all of it scattered like someone had abandoned their groceries in the middle of loading their car. I parked near the main entrance and checked my phone. The delivery instructions said apartment 2B, second floor, and to text when I arrived. I sent the message and waited, engine running, keeping my doors locked. Something about this place was setting off every alarm bell in my head. That's when I heard the screaming. It was coming from somewhere inside the complex. A woman's voice, high and desperate, calling for help. The sound echoed off the concrete walls and then cut off abruptly, leaving an even more unsettling silence in its wake. I tried calling Marcus to let him know I'd arrived, but the call went straight to voicemail. His outgoing message was generic, just the automated voice saying the number I'd reached. I was about to leave when I heard footsteps pounding down the exterior staircase. A guy in his early 20s came rushing toward my car, moving with the desperate urgency of someone fleeing a fire. He was wearing jeans and a t-shirt that looked like he'd thrown them on in a hurry, and he kept looking back over his shoulder at the apartment building behind him. "Are you the delivery guy?" he called out before he even reached me. "Yeah, I'm Jake. You Marcus." "That's me." He yanked open the passenger door and threw himself into the seat. "We need to get out of here. Now." I handed him the bag of energy drinks and snacks. "Dude, you seem pretty rattled. Everything okay?" That's when I got a good look at him. Marcus was pale, sweating profusely despite the cool night air, and his hands were shaking as he fumbled for his wallet. But what really caught my attention were the 4 parallel scratches running down his left forearm, deep enough to still be bleeding, with torn fabric around the wounds where something had clawed through his shirt. "Someone broke into my place," he said, not looking at me directly. His eyes kept darting to the apartment complex behind us, scanning the windows like he expected something to appear. "My roommate. He's been acting strange all week. Tonight he tried to." Marcus trailed off and shuddered. "Tried to what?" "Look, I know this sounds insane, but I think he's sick. Like, really sick." He attacked me with his bare hands, trying to bite my neck. His eyes were all bloodshot and he was making these animal noises. I've never seen anything like it. The scratches on his arm were still oozing blood, and I could see that they were deeper than I'd initially thought. Whatever had made those marks had really tried to hurt him. "Did you call the cops?" "I tried, but the line was busy. Then I tried again and got a recording saying all circuits were busy. That's when I tried 911 and got the same thing. Even the hospital's emergency line was jammed." Marcus ran his free hand through his hair, leaving streaks of blood from his wounded arm. "That's when I ordered food delivery. Figured at least someone would come. This was getting stranger by the minute. Emergency lines in Phoenix don't just go down, especially not all at once. The city has backup systems, redundancies, protocols for major disasters. For everything to be jammed simultaneously would require something massive." "What did your roommate look like when he attacked you?" I asked. Marcus closed his eyes for a moment, like he was trying to decide whether to tell me. "He was naked, covered in blood that wasn't his own, and his skin was this grayish color. But his eyes were the worst part, completely red, like someone had poured blood into them. And his teeth." He shuddered again. "They looked like he'd filed them down to points." "How long has he been acting strange?" "Started about 4 days ago. He stopped going to classes, stopped showering, stopped eating normal food. I caught him eating raw meat from the refrigerator, just tearing into a package of ground beef with his hands. When I asked him about it, he just stared at me and smiled." Marcus finally pulled out a $20 bill and handed it to me, though the order only cost $12. His hands were shaking so badly he could barely hold the money steady. "Can you give me a ride? I'll pay you whatever you want. I just need to get to my girlfriend's place across town." I hesitated. Giving rides wasn't part of my job, and this guy clearly had some serious problems. But something about the genuine terror in his voice made me reconsider. Plus, the extra money would help, and I'd driven plenty of sketchy people around Phoenix in my 8 months on the job. Where does she live? North Phoenix, near the Metro Center area. Please, man, I think something really bad is happening tonight. As if to emphasize his point, another helicopter thundered overhead. This one flying so low I could feel the vibration through my car windows. It was a military helicopter, not Phoenix PD or news media, but an actual Army Black Hawk. That was definitely not normal. I made a decision that would change everything. Get in the back and keep your head down. If anyone asks, you're my cousin. Marcus climbed into the back seat, still clutching his wounded arm. As I started driving north through Tempe, I kept glancing in my rearview mirror. He was pressed against the window, staring back at the apartment complex like he expected his roommate to come running after us. Tell me more about what's been happening, I said, trying to keep my voice casual. You said your roommate's been acting strange for 4 days? It started small, Marcus said, his voice barely above a whisper. He stopped talking to me, stopped acknowledging me when I tried to have conversations. Then he started staying up all night, just sitting in the living room in the dark. I thought maybe he was having some kind of mental breakdown, college stress, you know? We hit a red light at the intersection of Mill and University, right in the heart of the ASU campus area. Normally this place would still have some activity even at 2:30 a.m. Students walking back from parties, late-night food trucks, someone stumbling out of a bar. But the streets were completely empty, like someone had evacuated the entire area. Then what happened? 3 days ago, I woke up in the middle of the night because I heard these weird noises coming from the kitchen. I went to check it out and found him standing at the sink, drinking water directly from the faucet. But not like a normal person. He had his whole face under the stream, letting it pour into his mouth and all over his head. When he saw me, he just stood there dripping, staring at me with this blank expression. The light turned green and I accelerated through the intersection. In my peripheral vision, I caught a glimpse of something moving on the roof of a nearby building. A dark figure crouched low against the skyline. But when I turned to look directly at it, there was nothing there. The next morning, I found him eating raw hamburger meat with his hands, just tearing into it like an animal. I asked him what he was doing, and he looked up at me with blood all around his mouth and said, "I'm so hungry." But the way he said it, Marcus shuddered. It didn't sound like him anymore. That's when I saw it. We were approaching the intersection of Central Avenue and Indian School Road when I noticed the figure on top of the bus stop shelter. At first, I thought it was just a homeless person who had somehow climbed up there to sleep. Not unusual in Phoenix, where people will go to great lengths to find a safe place to rest. But as we got closer, I realized the figure was crouched in an impossible position, balanced on the narrow metal frame like some kind of large bird. Its limbs were too long, bent at angles that didn't look right for a human being. In the amber glow of the streetlight, I could make out pale skin and what looked like tattered clothing hanging off its frame. "Holy shit," Marcus whispered from the back seat. "There's another one." "Another what?" "Pull over. Turn around. We need to go a different way." But I was already slowing down, my curiosity getting the better of my common sense. The figure on the bus stop turned its head toward our approaching car with a jerky, unnatural movement. That's when I saw two things that made my blood freeze. Eyes that reflected the light like an animal's, and a mouth that was hanging open in an unnatural way, revealing teeth that looked all wrong, too many of them, too sharp, arranged in rows like a shark's. "Drive! Drive now!" Marcus screamed. I hit the gas, but not before the thing on the bus stop launched itself down onto the street. It landed hard on the asphalt with a wet smacking sound, but immediately started running after us. Not running like a person, but moving on all fours with an inhuman speed and grace that reminded me of a wild animal chasing prey. In my rearview mirror, I watched it pursue us for almost a full block, its pale body moving with a liquid fluidity that made my stomach turn. It only gave up the chase when we turned onto Central Avenue and picked up speed. "What the hell is that thing?" I shouted, my hands gripping the steering wheel so tightly my knuckles had gone white. I don't know, but there are more of them. My roommate looked just like that when he attacked me. Something's wrong with people tonight. Really wrong. We were driving north on Central now, passing through some of the rougher neighborhoods in Phoenix. Normally, this area would have some signs of life even in the early morning hours. Convenience stores with their fluorescent lights blazing, the occasional patrol car, maybe a few people hanging out in parking lots. But everything was shuttered and dark, like the entire city had gone into hiding. How many of these things have you seen? I asked. Just my roommate and now that one, but... Marcus paused, pressing his face against the window. There have been stories online, posts on social media about people acting strange, attacking their families and neighbors. Most of them get deleted pretty quickly, but I've been following some of the accounts. What kind of stories? Violent attacks where the perpetrators display unusual strength and speed. People who seem to have lost their minds but retain enough intelligence to hunt systematically. And they all have the same physical characteristics: pale skin, red eyes, pointed teeth. A fire truck screamed past us heading south, followed by 2 ambulances. In the distance, I could see the glow of what looked like a major fire, with thick black smoke rising into the night sky. The weird thing is, Marcus continued, the attacks all seem to have started around the same time, maybe a week ago, and they're spreading outward from certain central points in the city. Like what? Some kind of infection? Maybe. Or maybe something worse. That's when Marcus started changing. At first, I thought he was just going into shock from blood loss and trauma. His breathing became labored, and he started making soft groaning sounds. I kept glancing back at him in the mirror, watching him clutch his wounded arm and rock back and forth slightly. You doing okay back there? We're almost to your girlfriend's place. But Marcus didn't respond. His head was tilted back against the seat, and his eyes were closed. The groaning sounds were getting louder and more frequent, like he was in serious pain. Marcus? Talk to me, man. That's when his voice changed, became deeper, more guttural, like he was speaking through a mouthful of gravel. I'm so thirsty, he said, and there was something in his tone that made me feel cold all over. I glanced back at him again and felt my heart skip a beat. His skin had gone from pale to almost gray, like he was developing frostbite or hypothermia. The scratches on his arm had stopped bleeding, but now they looked infected, with dark veins radiating out from the wounds like poisonous roots spreading under his skin. But it was his eyes that made me nearly lose control of the car. When he opened them, they were completely bloodshot, and not just the whites, but the irises too. They looked like someone had filled them with dark red paint, giving him a demonic appearance. Marcus? You okay back there? He looked up at me through the rearview mirror and smiled. It wasn't a human smile. His teeth had somehow changed, becoming pointed and sharp like he'd filed them down to predatory points. His gums had turned black, and when he spoke, I could see that his tongue had changed color too, a dark purple that looked almost rotten. I can smell your blood, he said conversationally, as if he was commenting on the weather. Type A positive, right? That's good. That's really good. I had no idea how he could possibly know my blood type, but the fact that he was right made my skin crawl. I was on the I-17 freeway now, doing about 70 miles per hour with very little traffic around us. The nearest exit was still a couple of miles ahead. Listen, we're almost to your girlfriend's place. Just hang in there. Marcus laughed, but it sounded more like a snarl. The sound sent chills down my spine and made the hair on my arms stand up. I don't have a girlfriend, he said, his voice getting stranger by the minute. I just needed to get in your car. My heart was hammering so hard I could hear it in my ears. I tried to stay calm, to think rationally about my options, but panic was starting to set in. The hunger is incredible, Marcus continued, his voice taking on a dreamy quality. I've never felt anything like it. It's like being starved for weeks, but for something specific. Something warm and red and alive. I risked another look in the mirror. Marcus was sitting perfectly still now, staring at the back of my head with those horrible red eyes. His mouth was hanging open slightly, and I could see strands of dark saliva connecting his upper and lower teeth. "I'm going to bite you," he said matter-of-factly. "It's going to hurt, but only for a moment. Then you'll understand. Then you'll be like me." That's when I felt his breath on my neck. Somehow, impossibly, he had moved from the back seat to right behind me without making a sound. I hadn't heard the seat creak, hadn't felt the car shift with his movement, hadn't seen him in the mirror. He was just suddenly there, his face inches from mine. His breath was ice cold and smelled like rotting meat. I tried to fight him off while keeping the car on the road, but Marcus was stronger than any normal person should be. His fingers felt like steel cables as he grabbed my shoulders and pulled me back against the headrest. I could feel his teeth scraping against my neck, trying to find the right spot. In desperation, I yanked the steering wheel hard to the right and then back to the left, sending the car into a violent swerve. Marcus lost his grip and tumbled back into the rear seat. I used the opportunity to slam on the brakes as hard as I could. The car skidded sideways and then flipped. I remember seeing the desert landscape spinning outside the windows, feeling weightless for a moment, and then the horrible sound of metal crumpling and glass exploding. When I came to, I was hanging upside down from my seatbelt, blood dripping from my forehead onto the car's ceiling. It took me several minutes to get oriented and another few to work my way out of the wreckage. Marcus was nowhere to be found. There was no blood in the back seat, no sign that he had ever been in my car at all. The only evidence was the bag of energy drinks and snacks scattered across the desert floor. The paramedics who found me said I was lucky to be alive. The police detective who interviewed me at the hospital was polite but clearly skeptical when I told him about my passenger. They found no evidence of anyone else in the vehicle, and the security camera footage from the convenience store only showed me making the purchase alone. But I know what I experienced. And based on what I've been seeing on social media posts about strange attacks, people acting violently and then disappearing, reports of individuals displaying inhuman strength and speed, I don't think I'm the only one. The official news isn't reporting any of this. The authorities are staying quiet. But something is spreading through Phoenix, something that turns people into predators with an insatiable hunger for human blood. I've been monitoring the police scanner apps, and the emergency calls are increasing every night. Home invasions where the perpetrators are described as acting like wild animals. Missing persons reports that never make it to the news. Hospital emergency rooms that are mysteriously overcrowded. 3 nights have passed since my crash, and I can feel the tension building in the city. The infection, or whatever it is spreading. People are staying indoors after dark. The few who venture out move quickly and in groups. I don't know what started this or how to stop it, but I know it's real, and I know it's getting worse. If you're reading this from anywhere in Arizona, pay attention to what's happening around you. Trust your instincts, and whatever you do, don't pick up any strangers after midnight. The night shift isn't safe anymore.